journalism. They asked me to talk about the fact that we talk about international relations, international politics, and diplomacy, and my experience. So what I want to do today is I want to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take these three elements, put them together, but I decided to use a fourth element. One topic to make things broader, more interesting for you, that I think it's very fascinating for you. You're like in your 20s, so I'm sure this thing is going to be interesting for you. And this topic is interesting for three reasons. Number one, because it's part of the news and it's part of communications. Number two, it's part of the international relations scenario and geopolitics and things that you read and hear every day. And three, it's part of my experience. So today, we're going to talk about, if technology helps us, a little bit of, that. Cyber world, international relations, and journalism. Now, why did I decide to talk about, first of all, I want to say, believe me, this is not a cybersecurity lesson today, but I think this is going to be really interesting for you, because why did I decide to talk about cyber? First of all, because it's a fascinating and crucial world for every single one of us, not only of you, but of us in general. It's a very frightening world, and it's everywhere. Now, don't think about this as something that's going to happen in the future or something that's going to happen today. The cyber world happened yesterday, is already in our world, in the world of journalism, in the world of communications. And I think that we should pay a lot of attention to what's happening in the cyber world as a reporter, as journalist, as media, and as communication in general. Now, as a journalist, I entered the cyber world with books and articles, and it's incredible how the cyber world actually changed the way we see things, because you hear it at night when you watch television. You read it on your tablets or on your cell phones. It's changing our vocabulary and our way of seeing things. And reporters, such as myself, need to understand this in order to explain it to you. Now, let's start from here. Now, this is a very short list. I could have made it really longer, but I didn't want to bore you today. But let's start here, because this list, these words are in our daily life, and you read it on newspapers, and you hear it on the news channels every single day. I see some people nodding, yep. So let's go and see actually what we're talking about. Number one, cyber war. This is actually a war. It's a warfare between either two countries or one entity attacking another country, okay, with a computer. They can attack it through sabotage. They can attack it through propaganda war. They can shut off their electricity grid. Or, and we'll talk about it later, they can actually introduce a digital virus into their infrastructure. Cybercrime. Now, this is real crime, and it's crime that is happening every single day. It can attack a computer, networks of computers, or even a whole array of computer devices, which is very interesting. And with cybercrime, how do you do cybercrime? You can do identity theft through your cell phones. They can enter your cell phone and get your identity and do whatever they want with your name. They can spy on devices, get your information and data. They can do fraud, and they can do extortion with cybercrime. Cyber terrorism. Now, this is, some of these cross with each other, okay? Now, cyber terrorism is intimidation. I'm sure you heard about this and you read about this in your newspapers and in your and in everyday news, because it's intimidation through political objectives or social objectives. Cyber risk management. Now, this is very, very interesting, because with cyber risk management is companies, big companies, small companies, that try to evaluate and manage a cyber attack They can get their data, they can actually bring their company down, or they can do all sorts of kind of felonies, and this is the way they realize how to fight cyber terrorism. Then you have IoT. Does anybody know what IoT stands for? Nobody. You, yes. That's right. Internet of Things, meaning objects. Now, this is the technology that right now, not in 10 years, 20 years, but right now facilitates communications between devices or devices with the cloud. Let me give you an example. Your car can be hacked. They can stop your brakes. They can stop your steering wheel. Devices can be hacked. Then you have, obviously, artificial intelligence that obviously is used nowadays to help deter cyber attacks. Then you have ransomware. Now, ransomware is something very interesting because what they do is they steal your files. This is in the news, this is almost every day. They steal files, they encrypt the files, and then they say, if you want to read your files, you have to pay. You pay, especially in Bitcoins. So this is what they do. Then you have a malware. A malware is a malicious software that is designed to steal data from your cell phones or hear what you have to say. And finally, there's phishing. Now, phishing, they tried to actually do that to me. I was lucky enough to realize it. They send you emails that are very similar to the emails you get every day. Although you have to really look at it because some emails have a little mistake inside. For example, instead of writing, I don't know, Rome, they write room, R-U-M-E, instead of Rome. They look normal, like normal emails. You click on them, and your computer is infected, okay? A virus enters your computer, and that virus can stop your computer, read your emails, and do all sorts of kind of bad things. Now, these words here are the new vocabulary for journalists to actually understand and explain it to you. Now, there's two important things you have to realize today. You talk about gold, you talk about diamonds. No, it's data and information. They're very, very important for you today to try to keep secure, okay? And for us, for the journalist, it's very hard to explain to people how important that is. Believe me, when I was a reporter and I had to write about cybersecurity, it was so hard for me to try to explain to people that this is actually our lives. If they steal our data, it's a problem. So what we do is we try to steal information and also steal some of the, we could call them problems that we can actually solve by actually bringing up information. One of them is this, the CIA triad. Now, the CIA doesn't stand for Central Intelligence Agency. It stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's the limit and access of information that we reporters need to have to try to talk about this. Now, that triangle there is very important for us because with those 3 points, we try to make sure that our information is clear to the people. And sometimes we have really hard problems to have availability of information, have integrity of information. Information needs to be clear and needs to be definitely secure. Now, let's talk about what's going on now in the world. Let's talk about the Ukraine, the war in the Ukraine. Now, people report the war. They report on gas prices. They report on NATO, or for example, they report on the nuclear scare about Putin talking about the nuclear forces of Russia. We all heard about this in the news. Now, cyber terrorism, it can get a little confusing, but sometimes this is very interesting because it happens every day in our everyday lives. Possiamo caricare un attimo quell'altro? And I'm going to show you now why this is important. Because We think that cyber terrorism is something in the movies, but it's happening even as we speak. We hear now in the news that Ukraine is under attack, but in terms of cyber attacks, Ukraine has been attacked since Crimea, since 2014. Now, many of you are like saying, what, really? Sure, yep. And some people say that this thing never existed, but it did. March 2014, there was an attack, most probably Russian, on the computer networks in Crimea, okay? May 2014, there was the presidential election in Ukraine. And boom, you have cyber attacks even there. Now, these things have been going on and on in the news. December 2015, attacks on energy distribution companies inside the Ukraine, putting their infrastructure in total disarray. Boom, January 2016, there was a whole blackout in Kiev. That done with what? Bombs? No. Rockets? No. A computer. Cyber terrorism. Boom. 2017 in June. Now this is way before Russia invaded Ukraine, okay? Attacks on websites, banks, newspapers, and the Chernobyl nuclear plant. Okay? Now this is way before Zaporizhzhia, way before. Okay? So this brings you to understand that cyber attacks are inside the media and inside everyday's world. And it's very hard for us journalists to try to talk about this because cyber terrorism and cyber attacks are very difficult to explain because they don't, when they happen, you have to find sources and resources that it can explain to us what really goes on. And these resources and these sources, either they're a bunch of people or one source, they don't talk to you because they don't want you to know how this thing happens. So you have to go through a lot of situations that give you a kind of clear example of what's going on. Now, okay, now, this we saw. Oop. Okay. Here's another example of cyber war. Now, I want to talk to you about this because this is very interesting. Stuxnet is a computer virus that was used by the Americans and the Israeli to stop or marginally disrupt the Iranian nuclear plant in Natanz. What they did is they got a little USB key that everybody, I'm sure of you, use in your everyday work and studies. They planted a virus inside this key, and they smuggled it inside Iran. And they plugged it in their nuclear facilities. Now, the Iranians thought everything was going fine. All the numbers were all clear. And instead, this virus started to slow down all the nuclear plant itself. And it actually made pretty good damage. Now, do you want to know how this thing was found out? Not by journalists, not by reporters, but by the fact that this virus was so strong that afterwards it started to move to other computers. One after the other. It came out of Iran, it entered a PC entered another computer, and another computer. It went up to Japan, to South Korea, and finally people said, wait a minute, there's something going on. And then the reporters got a chance to find what Stuxnet did. But in the beginning, nobody ever knew why the Iranian program. It was called Olympic Games. That was the heading of this plan. And it was between 2008 and 2010, the end of the Bush administration and the first Obama administration, Stuxnet. So this is an example of a perfect weapon, but that nobody knew, not even the media knew. The media knew afterwards, because obviously this was so powerful, it went further. Now here's another example, very interesting example, because for reporters, the vulnerability, the main vulnerability is not a machine, but it's us, humans. We are the vulnerability number one. Why? Because we're humans. We have feelings, we're curious, we want to know gossip, we want to know what everything is going on. So cyber terrorists use what they call a candy drop. Here's what they do. If someone throws on the floor a USB key and you see it, do you want to pick it up? Many of them want to pick it up. Say, oh, wait a minute, there's a USB key. They pick it up and they say, what's inside the USB key? Because a lot of people are curious. Nah, don't say you're not curious. You want to know what's inside the USB key. Okay, now, okay. So you plug it in your computer because who knows? I don't know what I can find, okay? You plug it in and bingo, the virus is in your computer just like that. Now you think it's something stupid, something that nobody ever does. Well, here's another interesting story. Back in 2008, in the Middle East, somewhere in the Middle East, somebody did that to the United States forces. They threw a USB key on the ground, okay, and just waited until one soldier came, picked it up, and said, USB key, what's on this one? Instead of throwing it out, he goes back into his barracks, picks up his PC, plugs it in, and thinks, oh my God, here's what I'm gonna find, jackpot. Slowly, a virus entered inside his PC, and his PC entered the US main command. The Pentagon had to spend millions and millions of dollars to clean all that stuff up, all that stuff that came inside, and you know how the commanders stopped the soldiers by doing this? Something really fancy, something wonderful. They got the PCs, they got glue, and they glued the USB port shut. So nobody could ever put their USB keys inside. They said, no, don't do it, okay. That's manually. They got the PCs, they got a little tube of, super attack, and they glued it shut. So the soldiers could not put things that they find. That's the candy drop. It's a piece of candy on the floor. Did you see it? It has a color, okay? You want to see it, you want to taste it, you grab it, and that's why we are all vulnerable. Some people say, when journalists report and say, oh my God, he had a chance, he had his identity stolen because he put these things on social media. Exactly. We put our things on social media. Nobody forces us to do it. We do it ourselves because we think it's safe, it's secure, but it's not. We have to be very careful of the information and data, and that, as a journalist, I try to tell everybody of the things that we put on social media and the things that we try to move with other people. But this human factor is very interesting. Now, we spoke about war and peace in the cyber age. I showed you how even when Russia did not invade Ukraine, they attacked it with cyber attacks. Now, this is another part where reporters, such as myself, had to really dash, because in 2015 and 2016, some say allegedly, others say, no, it's them for sure. The accusation is that Russia hacked the Democratic National Committee in the United States. Did you ever hear about this? Okay, a lot of people are saying yes. Mainly, Hillary Clinton's emails, they were private, but then we can get into a story that she didn't really secure them well. But anyway, were actually hacked. And people say that Russia did that to try to change that election. Remember, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, okay? So election interference is a huge thing in terms of cybersecurity and in terms of journalism, because as reporters, we have to make sure that things are correct, the information is valid, and it's very difficult. Believe me, it's not easy, because a lot of reporters are not that cyber savvy. They're not that, people say that your generation, for example, is going to be the generation that will help other people understand, because in my generation, a lot of people don't even, they don't know what's going on. They don't, they're used to other things and, with the computer. But anyway, election interference is another really, really big situation that placed media into the spotlight in terms of cybersecurity. Now, my presentation is over, but I want to leave you with this cyber war order with a big question mark, because going back to journalism, and I'm sure all of you have questions after, but going back to journalism, reporters need to follow the basic ethical issues in cyber world as in the real world, okay? We have to do it. As we report on cyber or as we report on anything, safety, responsibility, accuracy of information. That's one of the main things. So this is a question mark because questions always arise, and we have to be sure. Today we spoke about cyber, tomorrow we can speak about anything else, but we have to always be sure that things are made accurately and the information needs to be double-checked. Thank you. And now, if you want to ask me questions about my experiences, everything should wait. I'm right here.
Hands, guys, if you have questions. Do you have questions? Okay, amazing.
Good morning. My name is Gaia, and I'm a second-year global governance student. I would like you to tell us more about your experience in journalism, and also a simple question, which is related to the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Sorry?
The Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Yes.
If it is related to war crime, to cybercrime, or, for example, cyber terrorism.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. No problem. You all know about Cambridge Analytica, okay? Now, actually, to be honest with you, it's neither one. It's not crime and it's not terrorism, because in that case is as I told you in my presentation, the importance of data of information, okay? In that case, information for companies is very, very important, because information can be stored, information can be sold. They can use all of our private information to do a lot of things. But it's not a matter of terrorism or crime. It's a matter of fact of how people actually use that information. Because unfortunately, in my experience, we give them our information. We give it voluntarily. When sometimes, we enter social media or we enter chats or other ways of communications, we give, your birthday, your social security number. Nobody says, don't do it. It's normal. But that information is out there. It's not placed in a secret vault with a key, okay? It's out there. People can reach it, unfortunately. And that's a good question also in terms of privacy. Because, for example, when I was reporting on cybersecurity, one of the big issues is privacy. The fact that you have to obviously be aware of privacy issues and the fact of, not hurting anybody else as you're reporting. Now, in terms of, you asked me about my experiences. As I said before, I began long time ago. It was in the 90s. I started as a freelancer doing internships and apprenticeships with CNN, Il Sole 24 Ore. And then in 2003, 2003, I entered Sky TG24. I was there since the beginning. And I was coordinator for a couple of years. And then in 2006, my boss at that time said, time for you to go and be a correspondent in the United States. And that was a very, very wonderful part of my job experience. And I stayed there up until 2009, 2010. I came back and I entered the political unit of Sky TG24 for 12 years. If anybody sees Sky, we're right there with all my good colleagues, Andrea Bonini and Massimo Leoni and all my friends. And I stayed then I decided after 18 years to leave Sky. Before I was talking with some of your friends here, and they said, "Why did you leave Sky?" Because personally, I think that after a while you have to make a lot of experiences. I don't see myself sitting in one place forever. As a journalist, I'm curious about life. I'm curious about things. I want to see other things. If things, evolve. So I decided to move out. I had this brief experience, fortunately too brief, with La Presse. Now I'm a freelance and I have other projects, but that's, yeah.
Just a second.
Oh, he has a booming voice. You can hear it from.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, I heard that you did live in Guantanamo Bay for like a short period of time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I would like to know how was the journaling part of living there? Because I know that the US doesn't want news to come out, or they do want to have a lot of privacy in Guantanamo Bay. So did you get to write what you wanted, or did you get censored? Thank you.
That's a good question, because I feel privileged that I had this professional opportunity. In Italy, not a lot of Italian journalists went into Guantanamo Bay, and I'm one of them. Okay, let me tell you how it happened. Obviously, I was fascinated with Guantanamo. All these, the United States taking people there, and obviously my passion is geopolitics, so Afghanistan, Iraq, the war, September 11th, how the Pentagon works. For me, it was a fascinating world. So one day I'm in New York, and I'm reading the New York Times, and there's a report about this reporter saying about Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And I'm like, wow, I wish I could go there, see it, tell my story, see what's going on. But there's one problem. I was, back then, a television. So I had to bring a camera, images. One thing is because a reporter, a news reporter for the newspaper, because he just writes, but you don't see it. One thing is going there and actually bringing your camera so people around the world can see what's going on. So I'm like, no, they're not gonna let me in. So I write an email and I write a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Are you all aware of that in the United States? Okay. The press says, you have to show me. You can't just shut us off, And I receive a no. I got an email from the Pentagon one day. I'm like, Pentagon. Mr. Foresi, your access has been denied. Sorry. So they're not, I call home, they're never gonna let me in, Try again. So I write another one. And I write an email almost every day for 1 year. I think at the end they said, okay, go. They said, okay, it's really, okay, you can go. But other reporters told me, said, Jordan, you're taking a camera there. It's not easy because all of the tensions and political issues about Guantanamo, both nationally in terms of the United States, but also internationally. So it was really hard for me. But I remember one day, it was January 2008, I received an email from the Pentagon saying, okay, you can go. Traveling is on your expense. You have to pay for traveling. Because I thought I was gonna fly there with a military aircraft. really cool, like a C-130, I flew from New York to, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, okay? And I took a small private airplane of an airline. I don't think it exists anymore. It was called, I don't know. I don't remember. It was a small airline. It was a really small airline. And it was so small, when the when the captain had to say something to the crew or to us, he didn't pick up the microphone. He turned around. That's how small it was. We're about to land, or no, the thing was that we flew at night. It was me, my cameraman, 2 lawyers, because at the time the trials were starting, okay? And one airman, 1 military serviceman, and pilot. It was dark. It was around 10:30. We take off from the runway, Fort Lauderdale, pitch black. We're flying into the Caribbean. As we're flying, oh, by the way, the airplane is a propeller plane. So the night, okay? So the pilot turns around and says, "We have to do gas refueling." I said, "What? We have to refuel gas? Where?" So I look out the window, there's nothing, black. Like, okay, fine, we're gonna ditch in the water. Bye-bye, that's the enemy. So we land in Exuma, Bahamas. Check it out on your Google Maps. Check where Bahamas is something like more than 20 islands. Exuma is like a rock. It has 1 airstrip, that's it. So we land, okay, it's January. It's humid. I come out, my shirt is drenched. We land on this airstrip. Now, all of you, you're like in your 20s, okay? I'm way older than you are. When I landed, the first thing I thought I'm in an episode of Miami Vice. Because I don't know, maybe the palm trees, the night, landing in the dark, I don't know, there was something like really, really cool about it. Anyway, to make a long story short, I like to talk about my experiences. This is pretty cool. Actually, because you made me remember this really cool thing, actually. So we depart again, and the first thing that I've noticed is that when we arrive towards Cuba is completely dark, okay? Then there's one huge light, enormous. That's the American base. Boom, okay? We arrive, they check our passports, they check our documents. There's soldiers there, obviously, with guard dogs. And they told us that they gave us a person that was gonna follow us we stayed for 3 days. That's it. After 3 days, you gotta leave. You can't stay more. They told me, they said, you cannot take pictures or filming of certain military installations because it's a base. It's not a prison. Okay, Guantanamo is a US base. It's a naval base. Inside, there's the prison, but it's a naval base. So they have military installations as any other base. So they said, you can't film this and that. And they introduced me to a gentleman who followed me literally for 3 days. And every day when we were done, he would look at all of our footage. Even if it was ours, he would sit down and say, play back what you filmed. Okay? And he said, no, you can't shoot this, you can't shoot that. So some things we couldn't shoot because it's top secret. For example, we could not shoot the prisoners in their face, only on the feet or hands. Okay? We could not talk to them. What else we could not do? Obviously, we could not move to other places without asking permission because it's military controlled. I had nobody told me what not to write. I wrote what I saw. I did a 27-minute special for Guantanamo Bay. And the first thing I wrote in my special was, what you're gonna see and what you're gonna hear is my experience. I'm not gonna, write something fancy or something obviously not true. I'm going to write what I saw. And I think that's the lesson number one. When you arrive in those places, it's obvious that you can't do whatever you want. You know, you don't waltz inside Guantanamo Bay and say, hey, you know, reporter, I do whatever I want. Nuh-uh. Doesn't work that way. You know, you have to follow their rules. It's a journalistic privilege to be there in the first place because they could have said no. So they're fair and clear. They've been very cooperative. I have to say, the military inside Guantanamo, to us, been very cooperative. You know, they said, you know, you do your job, we do our job. We try to make this thing, you know, as easy as we can. And if you start picking a fight or saying, no, I want to do this, I want to do that, they're just going to fly you off the base, you know, and you have no story. So I said, okay, fine. You have your rules, I have mine. I'll try to do my best to try to explain what's going on here, because it's not easy. Believe me, it wasn't easy, but I think I did a pretty good job on it. And maybe one day I'll show you my special with Sky Digi 2008, a long time ago. Actually, I wanted to do in 2018, I wanted to do the 10 years, but I couldn't do it. Anyway, it's somewhere, but it's there, it's there. It was quite a trip. And after 3 days, you just fly back. They put you in a plane and fly back. Any other question? Yes. Good morning.
Thank you for being here. I'm Rebecca
Pleasure.
Zollette, and from what I've heard, you were there when the plane landed into the Hudson
Yes,
River.
yes.
Oh my God! Did you meet Capitan Sally?
No.
Sally, no.
I'll tell you how.
Okay. No, I just wanted to ask.
I
you,
was there.
Yeah.
Okay, I was there.
I just wanted to ask you if you can tell us more and how
Sure.
the journalists actually dealt with the situation there in that particular situation. That's
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, they call it the miracle in the Hudson because nobody died. Nobody died. Captain Sullenberger saved everyone. Actually, when the Tom Hanks movie came out, and I went to see that movie, I was like, for the first time, I'm watching something that I actually lived. I actually saw this. Actually, the movie was really good. I mean, that's what happened. You know, there was a bird strike. He can't find, he says, you know, I can't make it to Teterboro in New Jersey. I can't make it back. I think it was LaGuardia Airport. Anyway, he uses the river as a runway and he comes down. Actually, that day I'm not working. That day I was off. Okay? Chances. I'm downtown because I had to do things with my U.S. taxes, and I actually see the plane coming down. I'm like, oh, boom, in the water. I was personally shocked. For me, it was like September the 11th. I mean, seeing a commercial aircraft landing inside the river, I thought they were all gonna die. My idea was the plane is gonna actually go down, you know, and they're gonna try to jump out, but that thing is gonna go down. It floated. It floated. They all came out, and believe me, the media was immediate. The response was immediate. They had boats coming in from all, you know, from Manhattan and from New Jersey. They all came and helped them. But the media was immediate. It was a little town there. The covering was incredible. No, I did not meet Captain Sullenberger, unfortunately. I tried to interview him afterwards, but believe me, the list of channels that were before me, CBS, AP, I have to tell Patricia Thomas that she came before me, but anyway, no, I'm just kidding. No, Patricia's a really good friend. CBS, ABC, CNN, obviously the American networks moved in, so we were way at the back, and I didn't have a chance to interview him. I tried. I called everybody. I didn't make, but I reported on it. It was very, very touching. About reporters having to deal with your emotions. I was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, there's an airplane like in the river? I mean, what? You know, when they dragged the airplane back to the port, you know, I was, you know, like, wait a minute, that's an airplane. So that shocked me. Another one shocked me was, I don't know if you remember, there was an Italian family, I think 2 families, who were on vacation in Manhattan, and they were taking a helicopter tour. You remember this? They were taking a helicopter tour over Manhattan, and an airplane, a small airplane, I think it was a Piper, departing from Teterboro, I think, they clashed midair. Did anybody, do you remember that story? It was an helicopter, you know those sightseeing helicopters that you have in Manhattan that, you know, they go? Well, he departed, he couldn't see them, I think radar problems, the tower didn't give him the right directions, and they hit in midair. It's something like very rare, and unfortunately everybody died. And that too was very touching because obviously the wreckage went into the river, and I was called by the NYPD. They said, because the family was Italian, so we were called in, and you know, when they found the wreckage, you know, it's not easy to go there and to see things. And I was talking before, I was also there when there was the Virginia Tech massacre, 2007. There was a student coming in and killed about like 35 between students and professors, and killed himself. One of those nights, I was there, obviously, with all the networks, and they did a prayer. They used the football field for the prayer at night. It was touching. Everybody had candles. It was very touching. And I think Patricia Thomas told you the other day, you know, we're humans. You know, we're reporters, but we're humans. You know, we have to keep our job, and do our job. But it's touching. You know, you can't. You know, when you see people crying and they can't talk. And when I was done doing my job, I was walking away, and a girl tapped on my shoulder and hugged me. She said, you know, I need to let it out, and it was touching. But yeah, sure. A lot of questions today. Good.
Okay, so good morning. My name is Raul Elia, and I am a global governance student. I had 2 questions. The first one is related to cyber terrorism.
Yes.
Do you think what the anonymous hacker groups did to Channel One in Russia is considered a terrorist attack for some reasons? And also, do you think that the case of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks can be considered as terrorism, like cyber terrorism or a cyber war? And also I wanted to ask, do you think that in order to establish a cyber world order, do we need a major event or a revolution first?
Good questions, very good questions. Okay, let me start with the last one, with the cyber world order. I was introduced to the cyber world by Jack Caravelli. I don't know if you saw his name on my books. He was unfortunately passed away. He was an ex-CIA analyst who introduced me to the world of cyber. As a reporter, for me, it was very, very difficult because I didn't know anything about it. And he actually, step by step, brought me into this world. And when I used to talk to him, the situation was frightening because he spoke about the fact that since we're all connected, this connection could create one big major problem. Bank accounts, power grids, nuclear plants. I remember one day we were having coffee, and he made a list of situations where one cyber attack can create damage out of the wazoo. And I was really frightened because I said, wait a minute, can you really do that with one button? He said, yes. If they're connected, if there's a connection, you can do whatever you want with this. With viruses, you can spy on people, you can make things explode. And when I wrote my book, when I went to that chapter, and it's really frightening to see what can, potentially happen. There are companies, governments that also try to do cybersecurity, try to prevent that from happening. But one thing is for sure, it's out there. It's not something that you see in the future. It's out there. I mean, they can really do so. Who am I to say? But according to Dr. Caravelli, today we need to really speed up into our knowing about cyber and cybersecurity, because it's the way of the future. You can really do a lot of damage with it. Now, Anonymous and Assange. There you get into ethical situations, okay? And, as a reporter, you have to be, you're stepping on eggs, okay? Because there are obviously two ways of seeing this. Many see Assange as a hero, okay? That he is exposing, bad things going on, and others see him as a traitor. Let me open up a little thing. Snowden, okay? I interviewed a lot of people who said that Snowden, you know who Snowden is, okay? Yes, okay, was a hero because he uncovered many stories about, what's going on, especially in the United States or government, military. I interviewed many people that said, he's a traitor. He put people life at risk. He got people killed because he exposed the secret of a thing. So it's very, very, very difficult to say for a reporter to wedge between ethics and morality. Okay, I can tell you this: for a reporter, the first thing we have to do is to read a lot and understand a lot. Some people write without even knowing. They write the first thing that comes out of their guts, okay? And I think it's wrong, because if you're ignorant about a subject, and that subject that you brought about is very, very delicate, okay? You have to understand what's going on. You can't just write the first thing. And unfortunately, many reporters just love to write and just love to put their opinions out. And I'm more of, before you check the facts, then you can say it's my opinion. But you can't do the other way. You can't just, first you get your facts right and understand what's going on. Understand the people that say Assange is a traitor, Assange is a hero. Then when you can, you're a human being and obviously you have your own opinion. But some people do quite the opposite. First they do the opinion without checking their facts and writing. Sometimes they write things that you're like, what? And see, nowadays, with online, with cyber, with everything, things come out. Before, you can just put a piece of one of your articles in a drawer and nobody even thought. Now, if you make a mistake, it's out there, in a second. Yes.
Good morning, I'm Manuela Lenori, and I had a question about the other of your book, the nuclear threat.
Yes.
I wanted to know more about the sources and the subtopics you dealt with in it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Posso far vedere un attimo quel libro, il minaccia nucleare? Minaccia nucleare? Grazie. Here it is. Okay. Jack Caravelli is the CIA agent that helped me, okay? He's my primary source, unfortunately he passed away. He was my primary source. He was an ex-CIA analyst. And one of his jobs was, back in the day, he was sent by the US government into Russia. To do what? To make sure that the Russians were dismantling their nuclear weapons under the START Treaty. He was there with a combined team, Russia and America, to see where, for example, the nuclear warheads were stored, for radioactivity and security. And he spent a lot of time with the Department of Energy in the United States to make sure these things were safe. And so this book is a first-hand account of what Dr. Jack Caravelli told me. So he's was my primary source. Okay, his life was my source. I also did a lot of research in terms of the U.S. Department of Energy, and also I spoke with a lot of my secret sources in terms of nuclear weapons and the disposal of nuclear weapons. When I wrote this book, people said to me, nuclear weapons, dai, non cerchiamo di fare I catastrofisti. Let's not be catastrophe. Now, I wrote this book when North Korea was shooting, remember 2016, 17, was shooting their weapons, rockets in the Sea of Japan. The first three chapters of this book is Russia. So now people call me, they're like, wait a minute. Okay, Jordan, you're right. Okay, let's, Russia. Okay. See, now this book starts to get attention for what's happening in the Ukraine. Everybody's talking about, l'incubo nucleare. It's frightening. I mean, because the weapons are out there. They are out there. And I think that, it's a war you never have to fight at all, because nobody wins. But weapons are out there. Those weapons are still out there, and a lot of them too. Now there are ethical discussions, political discussions as who should have them, dismantling them. There's a lot of peace of organizations to talk about this. But at the end, la minaccia, the nuclear threat is still out there. And the war in the Ukraine, unfortunately, brought the nuclear subject back into the light. And it won't go away overnight. Did I answer your question? Okay, no, the subtitle, okay. As I said, the Crisi Coreana was for the fact that I wrote that book when Kim was firing his rockets on in the Sea of Japan. Now, problems of the control of arsenals. Obviously, you have to, these arsenals are obviously checked, secured in silos, in bases, but, knowing that there are nuclear weapons around, you ask questions, who checks them? How many people need to check a nuclear weapon? Who decides when to check it, how to check it? When do you decide when a nuclear weapon is ready to get dismantled or not? I mean, we don't think about this in our daily lives, but then a war starts, you read it on the newspaper, nuclear threat, and then you have to think about it because it's part of our life. And terrorism, well, my idea when I spoke with Dr. Caravelli was like, can you smuggle nuclear material out of a base? And there's a whole chapter there. I'll do like Gordon Gekko. Gordon Gekko in his movie says, you want to know about this? Read my book. No, all kidding aside, one of the chapters is on dirty bombs. Dirty bombs are not nuclear bombs. They're bombs that are made with normal explosives, but they are packed with radioactive material. So you detonate one of these things. There's not a nuclear blast, okay? There's no mushroom cloud, but the explosion brings all the radioactivity around and it's in the air. So that really got me frightened. So I dedicated one whole chapter on dirty bombs and on the risk of terrorism. Yes.
So
I think that's the last one, right? Last question. Are we time? Okay, we can go on. Sure. Today we don't eat. We stay here and we talk about nuclear. No.
Okay. So Good morning. My
Good
name's Elio. My name's Elio Malitza, and I'm a second-year student, such as most of my colleagues here. My question is strictly related to a personal observation that I made and regarding certain cyber attacks, cyber scams, and so on.
Okay.
I observed that most of these tactics have been adopted by or developing countries or in general entities coming from developing countries. Okay. We can make the example of Russia, but we can make an example of the so-called Nigerian prince scam, or several tricks that North Korea uses to gain more funds through.
Do you consider Russia a developing country?
Yeah, because the strong effects made by perestroika on the Russian economy have been so profoundly deep that I'm not saying that Russian is per se.
It's an interesting theory. It's an interesting theory.
Just because
one day we'll discuss about Russian history and Russian. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if anyone feels offended.
No. It's not fast to be offended. I was asking you if you think that Russia is a developing country. It's not about it. No. Your question is perfectly fine. I was just curious. About your ideas.
Okay. So, Cyril, I observed that at the same time, United States, or I didn't find several articles regarding several cyber attacks moved by United States. Mm-hmm. It's because they do not adopt such tactics, or it's because they haven't been covered enough.
Okay, it's obvious that the United States has weapons, instruments for defending its own world and infrastructure, and they have also offensive weapons, digital offensive weapons. I gave you one example, Stuxnet. That was a secret for after a while, but now you have books and articles and programs on this virus. It's considered, many authors consider Stuxnet like the perfect cyber weapon, and but yeah, I would be quite. Really, it would be shocking if America didn't have in their arsenal, attacking instruments, also from defending instruments. I mean, every major world power, has these kinds of weapons because it's the way of the future. And now the reason why I asked you about Russia, as you consider a developing country, is because in terms of cyber, I think Russia is one of the main forces in the world, and I personally don't consider Russia a developing country. I mean, Russia, you mentioned perestroika, we can mention glasnost, we can mention the end of the Berlin Wall, we can stay here days talking about Russia. Very interesting, by the way. No, I think that Russia has to be considered a powerhouse nowadays. Okay. Although I personally believe that the world is divided by two, is China and United States, that's the G2, personally. But I cannot consider Russia, Russia is a power. Mm. Anyway.
Okay, thank you anyway for your answer.
Sure.
Good morning, I'm Giulia, and I wanted to ask you, what was your path on your way to become a journalist?
Okay.
And what did you study? Where did you study? Mm-hmm. And thank you.
Sure. Okay. When I was growing up, I never thought of becoming a journalist. It became by chance. For example, when I was in high school, I was the editor of the high school newspaper because I love to write. But I love to write. I didn't think about journalism. I wanted to do other things. It happened by chance. One summer I had an internship with CNN, and I loved it because my passion is international relations, as you obviously learned today, and geopolitics. So the idea of putting my writing skills, communication, and geopolitics together, it blew me away. I was like, this is it. I want to become a journalist. But it happened overnight. I never, okay, I'm not one of those journalists that when we was a kid, oh, I dream about, no, I was thinking of other things. And I did not do a specific journalism school, if that's what you're asking. No, I did international relations. Okay, relazioni internazionali, government studies, that's what I did because I wanted to go into that field. But then when I became a reporter, I used what I learned in government and I brought it over into journalism. One thing though, I wanted to say that in my experience, all the really good journalists that I've met, nobody ever did school of journalism. The really good ones that I met. I'm not saying that journalism schools are bad. I'm just saying that in my experiences, the really good reporters that I've met, and I was like, wow, how good are you? And I even, start stealing some of the way of, I was observing. None of them did school of journalism. They all did economia e commercio, international relations, law. Others, I have a good friend of mine who doesn't even have a laurea or a degree. He stopped. He said, he started working. He's excellent. He's great. His writing is impressive. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, but he's really cool. And he doesn't have a laurea. He doesn't have a degree. It doesn't matter. I mean, he started working when he was very young, and he's just the best. I think because he's curious. He reads a lot. Okay, here's one other thing. Read a lot. Okay, read everything, newspapers, articles, read. Keep yourself informed, even if you read. I read a lot. That's me. I have books everywhere at home. my home overflows with books everywhere. I spend practically all of my money on books. Oh, and another thing. I'm old. I don't like to read on a computer. I need a book, okay? I need physically a book. I need to smell that book. I need to, to underline. I need a book. So now I know that, everybody uses, Kindle and stuff. I can't. I need a book. I need to read a book. Anyway, but read a lot. And he does. My friend does. My friend devours books. We even tease each other. How many books did you read this week? 3, 4, 9, 25, I just, big reader. But anyway, I didn't do schooling. I have my degrees, I have my master's, but I was gonna go into government. I wasn't going to journalism. Then it came in, I loved it, and here I am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. My name is Francesco Mastidoro. You said that you're very interested in geopolitics,
Yes.
so I wanted to ask you, what is the impact of cyber attacks, cyber terrorism on geopolitics? Because there is one thing, I think there is one interesting thing about cyber attacks when it comes to geopolitics. That is that even very small states that maybe are not so powerful maybe do not have a very powerful army, a large army, can be very powerful in cyber attacks.
Oh, yes.
So what
Yes.
is the impact of this on geopolitics?
Well, I think I answered that in my presentation. I mean, obviously, I gave you some examples. For example, I gave you the example of what happened in the United States with the hacking of Hillary Clinton emails. That changes geopolitics. Imagine a political election. Now, let's talk about a hypothetical election. Okay, let's not talk about the American one because we'll go on and talk forever. Imagine changing or affecting that election through cyber with trolls, propaganda, media distortion. That's affecting geopolitics because the scenario of international relations changes because a government goes one way and another government goes another way. And you have changed the course of history through cyber. You have changed the course of history through the fact that you change an election, you move towards a different election, you move towards a different person. So that's a way cyber can can interfere with geopolitics. And obviously, if cyber weapons interfere and change into geopolitics because nobody knows about them. You don't know that's happening because you don't see an airplane, a missile, an army. You understand it when it's already done, when it's already over, okay? You're in the middle of something and your computer turns black. Been hacked. What's going on? You open up, there's no tanks coming at you. There's no infantry moving. There's no ships on your shores. And there's no bombers on your head. It's silent. And it's there, it happens, and you know it afterwards. There's a girl right there. Yeah. I'm going on. I don't know if there's time.
Good morning. My name is Annalisa D'Amore. I'm also a second-year global governance student. You have mentioned North Korea, and I'd like to ask you, since, as far as I know, there is a very limited access to the internet, and it's also like for citizens, it is you're only allowed after a governmental authorization. Mm-hmm. So it is mainly used for governmental purposes. And I'd like to ask you if in your opinion, this makes them more vulnerable to cyber attacks, if it makes them stronger, or if it doesn't, affect at all their position towards cyber attacks. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I'm not an expert on North Korea. I have other areas of expertise and of interest. I'm not a real expert on North Korea, but I can probably answer this question with time ago. I was in a conference just like ours today. It was like a lesson, and the person who was talking said something very interesting, and I think we probably answer your question. He said, "Today, the fact that if you are not connected, if you are technologically backwards, you're safer." Because people were asking, wow, we need more technology, we need to move forward, we need to have, the future is on technology, the future is on being connected, we have to all be connected because today you press a button and you can go here and you can go there. And he said, wait a minute, wait. He said, okay. He said, the person said, I am not against technology. I am not against the future, obviously. But he said, in terms of vulnerability, okay, that's what you said, of being vulnerable, the less connected, the safer you are. There's an air gap in between. You don't put yourself, a country, a company, into harm's way. The more connected, obviously, the chances are you can get hacked. Obviously, the air gap, it's making sure that you're not into that system, okay? As a reporter, every time, I ask myself the same question. Is it better to have, to be in a situation where technology, where you don't have that access to use it as a defense? Maybe the person that was standing was right. Maybe you have to try to think that less is better. Personally, I don't think so, because I like the fact that, technology evolves and evolves around us personally. But maybe the fact that some countries or some companies or some individuals don't put themselves into that situation. Maybe it's better for them because they are not vulnerable as other people are. Yes? I think this is the last one?
Yes, this is the last one.
This is the last one, okay.
Okay, good morning one more time. Thank you very much for your interesting speech. And my question is about the point of truth in the news. On example of Ukraine and Russia, I read news in Russian, I read Ukrainian news, I read Western news, and I always curious because all the parties claim different things. And the brightest example is Bucha. I mean, and being like a pathetic reader and not to be influenced and to get the truth, how can we understand which party is saying the truth? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Okay, first of all, personally, I never went to the Ukraine, okay? I'm not a war correspondent. probably a war correspondent would answer your question better than myself, because I know people who went to Ukraine and saw things. They saw massacres, they saw the bombings, they saw the destruction, and their firsthand accounts is a reliable source, because they say, Jordan, I've seen these things. Don't listen to what other people, I've seen them. Okay, no, that village was not destructed. No, I was there. I saw things. I saw it like mass graves. So in your question also brings up something very interesting, and unfortunately we don't have time. It's about propaganda. Okay, propaganda, it can be done also with cyber. Okay, one part saying no, it never happened. Other part saying no, it did happen. You have to be there with reliable sources, eyewitnesses. You have to see them. And I think that I've known colleagues that go to Ukraine. I have also Ukraine people that told me, Jordan, don't believe what people write. You have to ask me, because I was there. And that's very powerful, okay? Because people actually see and they talk, because sometimes media gets filtered, but you have to go to firsthand accounts to actually make sure of what's happening, okay? Perfect. Guys, we're done. Oh, wait, hold on. Now, since we're talking about social media, like that, let's do a next selfie so I can put it on my face. Okay? Now, at 3, I want a big cheese, okay? I cannot tag every single one of you, but at least now, it's my experience on this beautiful thing. Okay? Sure.